here we go. Hi, everyone. Hey, welcome to our Wednesday book study. I'm just looking for when YouTube comes on so I can click it off. Here we go. There it is. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone, post-conference to our book study. Yeah, it's good to see everyone. That was a great conference, wasn't it? I hope many of you were able to come to the conference and see some of our favorite people and new ones also. And we're back to chapter 18 in our book. You are the happiness you seek. And we have Jenny Beal back. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Bill. Lovely to be back.
So good to, I just love this book study. I say this probably every week. We're going to come to the end, and I don't know what's next on the book study side of things, but I'm sure something will show up. We have a few months before I go to India for the month of December. And we've begun filming Awakening Mind documentary, and that's very exciting. We've lined up our schedule. We've filmed a couple of interviews, and we have a couple coming up in October, November. And so that's another whole thing. That'll be published in 2023. And we have a couple of surprise teachers that are going to be part of that will be over the top. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll still be busy, but I don't know what we're going to do together with this awesome group that's been following these back-to-back book studies, but I'm sure something will show up that'll be great. And this is another great chapter. Jenny, where would you like to start with chapter 18?
Well, the title is beautiful, isn't it? It just sums up non-duality, the unity of being. As, there's only one being, only one reality. And the quote at the beginning, the kingdom of God is within you and it is outside of you, that comes from the Gospel of St. Thomas. And for those of you who don't know it, there's a lovely interpretation of that by Cameron McCall. It's very beautiful. He interprets it very much in the direct path style. And of course, we can say it much more simply. We can say there's no longer an inside or an outside, because when there's no feeling of anything being outside, then the concept of anything inside no longer makes any sense.
Right.
But initially it does seem like there's an inside and an outside. And when we're in that situation, then the starting point, as Rupert explains, is to go inside. So he says, so that's on page 147, in order to recognize our essential nature, it is first necessary to divest our being of the qualities and limitations it seems to have acquired from experience. This involves turning within, sinking into being, to the exclusion of objective experience.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing that is missed, it seems like in the beginning, is that we have to separate, we have to untether our identity from this personal self. We have to untether from that. Know the self, and then go back and include the thing that we untethered from, and everything else.
That's the Vedantic path. There is a tantric path which doesn't do that. But Rupert normally starts with the tantric path, because generally with the Vedantic path, because generally people find that a bit easier. But in fact, it was interesting to hear Don Hoffman say that he felt his source of creativity came from what he called contentless awareness. So that's consciousness without objects, or pure meditation. And it's really the same thing, turning in. He spends around 3 hours a day actually meditating, and it's non-objective meditation, just like we do in the direct path. And that's where all his truly amazing ideas come from.
I love that that interview and dialogue that you had with Don for the conference. It was so, it just really made solid the agreement of someone that knows science. They know the understanding of cognitive rational thinking and psychology, and his own experience with consciousness.
Yes.
It's just that agreement just feels, it feels like that's where we're evolving to. And of course, he is one of he and other scientists like him are the pioneers of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like that lovely quote from Tennyson. I may not get it quite right, but it's something that Atmananda quoted. Follow knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bounds of thought. And that's one way. That's one way, instead of going inside, to go outward through science, which is what he did. And then you end up in the same place. That's what's so amazing. It's like this image of the snake that swallows its own tail, the Aurora Boreas. Amazing. You end up in the same place as if you went inwards. And of course he does both.
Yeah. The I mean, it's just awesome to have all these different modalities, different traditions and layers or parts of our experience when it agrees with each other and with this teaching.
Yeah.
I just want to say to everyone that's just coming in, my apologies for the late notification today. It usually goes out before 10 a.m. and today it went out at 12 at noon. So you're not late. Your email isn't late. We're late sending it out. So my apologies to the ones that are coming in now.
Amy wants to know about the St. Thomas's Gospel. It's Cameron McColl. You've actually spelt Cameron correctly. McColl is McColl. So it's Cameron McColl.
Okay. So there's the second to the last paragraph on this page 147 is great. It talks. I love these things that where it says mind is awareness in action. Awareness is mind at rest. And here's another one that's like that, where Rupert says this involves this experience of divesting our being of the qualities and limitations, involves turning within, sinking into being to the exclusion of objective experience. In this process, being is initially revealed as the neutral ground that underlies all experience. And then this neutrality gives way to peace and, in time, joy. As Van Amar, a Dutch teacher of non-duality, once said, peace is happiness at rest, and happiness is peace in motion.
Yes.
I like that. That really feels, it's good to see how they interact, the experience interacts with the movement of its quality of the movement quality is an expression of the resting quality.
Yes, and it's where time and space just disappear when we sink down beneath those waves of experience, just to the stillness of the ocean floor. And that does it does remove both time and space. Don said space-time is doomed, and he's quite right. It's not primary. It really isn't. And that's when once you remove space-time, then that's when the inside and the outside disappear, and there's only one being. And Rupert says our being is not our being. There's no me to whom being belongs. It's just utterly intimate, yet impersonal, infinite being. Being loses its apparent limitations and is understood to extend beyond the individual. It's shared, universal, and whole.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I put a double line under our being is not our being.
Yes.
Because and it's interesting that these ideas, for me, they come in gradual until they're understood, and when they're understood, it's like super clear.
Yes. I think there's also a kind of progression with the language, which goes on in this chapter too, because he starts off talking about sharing our being, and that's just a starting point. But then we need to go on from there to discover the true unity of being, where there's no sharing, there's no division into subjects and objects. Everything is intimately interconnected. There's no boundaries. I'm not located anywhere, and it's hard to describe because it's a felt sense that comes from that very deep peace. And he goes on to explain that later. But you start off with this this much easier statement that we share our being, and then you go to that deeper understanding, which is much more a felt understanding later in this chapter.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to this very last sentence on the first page, because I want to highlight that. For everyone, but also for myself, because this statement is this the statement that he refers to as Balayani, flowing down.
No, that comes from Rumi, flow down and down and down in ever widening rings of being, and that's really a description of the method of non-objective meditation. It's such a beautiful, succinct description of how to meditate.
Yeah. But that whole idea, it's a beautiful statement, and for me, it's really taken about hearing it about 10 times before I've really been able to connect with the essence of what it's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Just for me. I at first I'm going, oh, that's a beautiful thing, going flowing down. And if you go to his retreats, you'll hear him say it every time at a retreat. You'll hear him quote that Rumi quote. And it's only just recently where I'm reading that and going, oh, okay, this is coming into a feeling experience.
Yes, it does. It takes you to the oneness of being, to non-objective meditation, and to consciousness without objects. Nirvikalpa Samadhi takes you directly there.
Yes, it's awesome. And then when we moved, you want to move to losing the sense of separation?
Yes. So this is where he's describing his own childhood memories of the sense of melting into the landscape that young children naturally feel if they have access to nature. And I do think it's important for children to have access to nature, but often it gets lost later on and need to be reawakened in sudden glimpses. And we don't take much notice of those glimpses, when they happen in our 20s and 30s and 40s at the time. But later, when we recognize our true nature, we remember them, and they take on a completely new significance. And so he gives an example of, we may be walking along a street or path, and suddenly the sense of being solid, dense, and located dissolves. We experience the world as a stream of perceptions, and the body as a flow of sensations appearing in the openness of awareness. We are not a body walking through the world. The body and the world are flowing through us. But that's just Rupert's description of his own experience. We shouldn't be looking to replicate that. It's important to be open to however this experience presents itself in us. For me, it's much more, all this is me, this beauty, this magnificence, no real solidity, walking on air, the universe, breathing love and warmth, no division, no boundaries, nothing separate. And we'll all experience that in our own, and express that in our own different ways.
I have found a greater connection to the outside element, the trees, the deer, the fish. Just being outside does bring a renewed connectedness to nature. I mean, what he's describing is my new experience within the last, I would say, even 5 years.
Yes. When I was working, I used to live in London, but we had a cottage out not far from where I am now, in the Cotswold Hills, and it was very important for me to go out there into nature and walk in the peace of nature, because it brings you back to what you really are.
Yeah, and your connection with everything.
Yes.
In our shared being. I mean, this is what this whole chapter is talking about. Our shared being. It makes it harder to. I mean, for me, it makes it. I'm aware when I'm killing bugs that I'm killing something that is what I am. In its essence, when the body of the bug is gone, the essence of the life force that made it fly or crawl is me too.
Yes, but then so is everything that's inanimate as well, the non-sentient. All of that is myself. You feel that with the ground you walk on, the earth you dig in the vegetable garden. All of that is myself. I think it really does help an awful lot to spend at least some time being close to nature. And in Rupert's retreats, he does encourage people to go out for walks and things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's Byron Katie, right?
Yeah.
So I went on one of these 9-day retreats with Byron Katie once, and one of the exercises was for the room was to go outside and for an hour and find an object that you make a connection with. Can be a rock, can be a tree, can be a branch, can be a leaf, anything. And it was so weird. It was so great because I found a rock and I had a conversation with this rock. I'm asking this rock questions and it's answering me. Anyway, that was fun.
Yes.
So on page 140, in that lower section, losing the sense of separation, what would you highlight?
Yes, he says on page 149, we continue to experience the world through the medium of the body, but the body has lost its separating power. The universe becomes our body. And that's not something the mind can grasp. We can't really get hold of that, but it's a deep feeling which eventually becomes our default feeling. So you can't make it happen. It arises in its own way and in its own time. And some of the yoga meditations are quite helpful, but usually it won't arise initially in a yoga meditation. It suddenly happens when you're out walking or something, and that's very beautiful because there aren't any objects anymore. There's no separation. Everything merges into everything else.
Yeah, it's the point where you are just you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You're just you. You are you, and before and during and after. And actually, that's not even true. You're just you, and these experiences seem to be linear, but you're just you.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think was really interesting from Don Hoffman was his explanation of why we don't see reality as it actually is. And he explained, and it made such sense, but I'd never thought of it this way before, but he explained how humans have evolved to perceive the outside world through an interface, rather like we deal with files on our desktop, through an interface of icons. And so he has this, he's in it as an axiom, but he's actually got a mathematical proof of it based on Darwinian evolution of fitness beats truth. So that is actually a consequence, and I've been looking at the mathematical proof of it. It's actually a consequence of Darwin's theory of evolution. So what's really important is not to mistake the interface for reality. In the interface, everything is divided into objects, but in reality, as he explained, there's no real divisions there. they're all conceptual, and what reality is like is completely different. There's not even a mapping, or what's called mathematically a homomorphism between the two. Not even that. It's totally amazing.
That conversation blew my mind.
Mm.
When he was talking about the green Camaro, or talking about the interface.
Yeah. Yes.
God.
Yeah.
That was just that was awesome.
Yes.
I'm going to go back and watch that interview a couple more times, because whenever Don Hoffman starts talking, what he's saying feels like it's coming in to an understanding. But and this is why I was so happy that you interviewed him, because you connect him. You're the mathematician and you're the scientist, and you have that level of cognition that connects the dots. I have to listen to something like that 4 or 5 times, and then it comes in slowly, and then I get it. I still need to listen to him a few more times talking about that interface to know it.
It was so amazing the way his viewpoints and his theories so clicked so clearly with a very different expression in non-duality, which was one of the things I was trying to illustrate throughout. And that's one thing about the desktop, and yeah, a perfect illustration of exactly what Rupert is saying here.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to have corroborating ideas, completely coming from completely different places.
Exactly, because if you hear it from just one angle, then it doesn't have as much power as if you hear it from several different angles, and somehow it kind of penetrates deeper, and then that it strengthens that real feeling understanding inside you. So I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, it is. So let's turn to page 150. And what do you see that we would highlight on this page, Jenny?
Yes, well, really on exactly that theme. He says everyone has first-hand direct knowledge of the underlying reality of the universe through the experiences of love and beauty. In the experience of love, we recognize our shared reality with all people and animals. In the experience of beauty, we recognize our shared reality with all objects and nature. And that's beautiful. That's absolutely right. You can see it from a scientific perspective, but you can equally see it just as well, just as clearly, from beauty and love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to. I mean, to go to the experience that he's describing here. You really have to pause and allow things to be seen and felt and known. You really have to pause in your person experience. Many of us multitask and try. Or I'm talking about me mostly. We multitask, and so you're not present with that one thought or that one experience, because you have 4 things, and so you're trying to juggle 4 thoughts, so you're not really with one of them.
Yes, there's a lovely practice which it's a mixing practice from contemplative photography, according to the mixing method, where you start just from being aware of being aware, and you don't focus on anything, and you just wait for what's called a flash of perception, and something catches your attention, and you just allow it to allow that perception to fill you up, and that is beauty. And it's strange, all the things that can be beauty. The one I often mention is when I was on a mixing course, and I saw this plastic bag by the side of a little sandy path, and that was just sheer beauty.
How do you spell that? What your
Miksang, Miksang. It comes from Shambhala Buddhism, but it fits very beautifully with all of the tantric stuff which Rupert teaches.
Okay.
Was one of the things that he encouraged me to explore.
All right. Well, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Mixing.
Miksang, Miksang.
Oh, mixing.
Miksang, yes, means good eye.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'll be looking for books on that.
I'll send you some.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
In the third paragraph, from the bottom on 150, Rupert talks about now. First, he talks about now imagine, a paragraph above that, now imagine that each of us were to remove all the objects from our room. So he's talking about is this his library and in my library, being in two different locations, and removing the walls, the roof, and now remove all the objects from our room, and even to dismantle the walls within which the space seems to be contained. So we're doing an experiment. What remains of the difference between our two rooms, when you remove all the furniture the same in each one, are they still separate? So there's no walls, there's just air. Are they still separate? Have they united? Were they ever really separate to begin with? These are great investigative questions into the contemplation of what is being revealed. And then he says, were there really even two spaces to begin with?
Yes.
Now it keeps going. He says, now do the same experiment with yourself. Imagine removing from yourself all the temporary changing elements of your experience, thoughts, images, memories, feelings, sensations, perceptions, activities, relationships, and so on. What remains of yourself? Just formless, aware being. Now do the same experiment in your imagination with someone you love. Remove in your imagination everything that is not essential to them. What remains? Formless, aware being. Are your being and their being still separate? Have you united? Were you ever really two separate beings to begin with? What a great experiment.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because it brings it down to the essence.
Yes, and it's so obvious, isn't it?
Yes.
It's so obvious that if you take away what changes, what's left is the same in everyone. And then he suggests doing the same with someone you don't like. I'm not sure I could do it with someone who I've seen on the media, because all I've seen of them is their behavior or their quotes or other people's thoughts about their behavior or what they've said. So you can't get a feeling of being from that. I've found. I mean, if you watch Donald Trump or Boris Johnson or Liz Truss, all you see is behavior and nothing else really. But it's when you actually do it with someone you don't like face to face, I think that's very different. And if you're then able to establish yourself as your true being, there is no feeling of separation. And you can see when their words or actions trigger a sense of separation in yourself. You can see how inauthentic that is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I have judgment on some of our political landscape.
Me too on ours. Not sure whether yours is worse than mine. I think mine's worse, but there we are.
It has to be consciousness. It has to be the expression of the one.
Exactly.
It's diluted itself in all these different scenarios.
Yes.
And I just want to say before I forget, if you're here, and this is a political statement, wherever you are, make sure you go out and vote and make what you care about matter. That's all I'll say on that.
Yes. Yes.
So it says, I like this third paragraph from the bottom where it says, the last sentence says, we fall in love with someone's essence. We have to live with the other personality. I thought that was, I put a smile face by that one. That's true. Right. In some points, I mean, it's kind of a joke. In some ways, you become familiar with some of the things that you are kind of quirky about yourself or someone else. And then as you're friends for a long time, that quirkiness that you thought was weird, you kind of laugh at it, think it's kind of cool. It's them, or you, and it's it becomes part of the thing that's no longer separate or weird. It's just it's what this essence is expressing itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he says whether we like somebody or not is determined by the relationship between one character and another, between one set of conditioning and another. That is, the content of each of their thoughts, feelings, activities, and relationships. And the experience of love has nothing to do with whether we like or dislike a person's character. It's the recognition of our shared being. And we can't change our conditioning, but we can become aware of it and aware of how it influences the way we view our experiences. And in any case, it changes very subtly with every experience we have. It's our conditioning is really just as we said before, it's just a set of models that we project onto our experience in order to make sense of it, to interact with the world. And those models are continually evolving.
Yeah. Well, there's he gave a statement. It's a few pages away, but he gave a statement here that it'd be kind of fun to see how this goes. To go to your partner and say, honey, babe, husband, or whatever, I love you, but my happiness is not dependent upon you. Yes. Try that one and see how that fits.
I'm not sure how well that's going to work with someone who doesn't share this teaching, but I think there are ways of expressing it rather than saying it like that. And I think the ways you can express that is when they're sad and miserable and depressed, then you're calm and you're happy. I mean, you're not sort of bubbling over with happiness, which is obviously going to make things worse for them. But there's that kind of being with someone who's calm and peaceful when things are difficult for you, and that's showing that your happiness is not dependent on them. So you don't need them to be happy, them to be all right for you to be happy. And I think it's things like that which just communicate in a much more subtle way, rather than actually saying it outright.
Yeah. Well, the reason it tickles me is because Lisa and I have said that to each other,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have a I mean, you really have to be ready for that soundbite.
Yes.
You have to be ready to hear that.
Yeah.
And it's not for the faint of heart, because we really like to be favored.
Yes, we can still be favored, but not as an object to bring happiness. I think, I mean, it's natural that we feel at ease with some people and less so with others. I think.
Yeah. A statement like that can it might hit the wrong chord at the wrong time and give you hours of of a different
problems,
movie.
yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So be careful with that one. Anyway, that's a few pages away. You want to go to 152, page 152?
Yeah. Yes.
There's
he says, in fact, we do not, this is the important bit I was referring to before. In fact, we do not share being as if being were an attribute of individual people. Ultimately, there are no individuals, no separate selves. There is just infinite, indivisible, and utterly intimate being, which shines in each of us as a sense of being myself, or I am, before it is qualified by experience. Love is not a relationship between two people, it's the collapse of relationship. It's the dissolution of everything that defines a person as a separate, independently existing entity, and the revelation of the being that we share with all others. It's the dawn of unity. I think we have to be careful not to misunderstand this when we're talking about a collapse of relationship, because as we said, there is a difference in personalities, so a difference in body minds and what they like and what they enjoy and what they don't. And I think in a relationship, it's really important to allow your partner complete freedom. Allow them freedom to express, freedom to enjoy things that you might disagree with or things that you might not like.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because in your relationship, some of the things you love about your partner or your friend, your best friend or your kids or whatever, in a person experience, some of the things you like is just their laugh, just their the way they sit. Yeah. And so it doesn't even have to have words attached. It's a connectedness that sometimes has human qualities that are just awesome, or weird. Yeah. But I do like the idea that that the essence, when it's like the meditation that Don or I have a meditation experience practice in the morning before the sun comes up. I just like to be quiet in a dark room with no lights on and just sit for 30 minutes before anything happens. And the cats will come in, they'll kind of walk by my legs, or they want my attention. But it's that quiet uh, opening of the day. And that's what is being touched when we talk about I am.
Yes.
Prior to the experience of the thinking mind or the chores of the day or anything else.
Yes.
So the next section is the self of all selves.
Yes, and that's the sort of practical application of this understanding, isn't it, really? So he says, next time a loved one fails to treat us in the way that we would like to be treated, or says something unkind or disrespectful, we may become aware of the impulse to react emotionally and to retaliate on behalf of a hurt self. If we look for that hurt self, we never find it. We may find thoughts, feelings, and actions that arise on behalf of a hurt self, but we never find the hurt self itself. And it becomes obvious, in fact, that what the person is saying or doing is actually simply a reflection of their own conditioning and has nothing to do with us anyway.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's I don't often refer to the course, but the course says projection makes perception. So it's you projection. Yeah.
Yes. And it doesn't, as he, I think, says later, it doesn't mean we don't respond appropriately to that sort of behavior. So, if you're still working and you're bullied at work, then maybe you try to sort out the problem with your boss. And if that doesn't work out, you look for another job and leave. And that's just natural intelligence. It's a sensible thing to do. You don't think, oh, I've got to be very spiritual and just put up with this. You don't.
Right. Yeah. It's that's that's often misunderstood as well, I need to heal this. I need to stay with this until it's healed.
Yes. Yeah. not necessarily. No.
Right.
It's I think the right action just arises in the moment.
Yeah. It does if you give it the pause experience. If you're so caught up in the thoughts and the beliefs and the triggers and the past and the upset, if you're so caught up in that, you're not in a place of listening, of listening in silence, of listening, of allowing the movement to reveal itself in your movement.
Yes, it's listening to the universe. It's because it's what you're after is impersonal action, and it's what's the impersonal action? What does the universe want? What's right for everyone in this situation?
Yeah. As soon as you ask that question, it brings equal measure. It brings equality. What's the best situation for everyone?
Yeah.
And then allow that to come up. If we go to page 154 at the top, Rupert says a response. Let's see. Oh, okay. So he's talking about the Shantananda Saraswati and that story of a tiger jumping out.
Yes. Now that story doesn't actually come, interestingly, from Shantananda Saraswati. It's a very good story, but it doesn't come from him. There's two lovely stories from the Advaita tradition along similar lines, and I think Rupert has put the two together. I've got them here, and I'll just put them on the chat for people.
Oh, you mean a link?
I've got a link to one, and the other story is very short, so I can. I think I should be able to put all of it on.
Okay.
Right, here we go.
Thank you. There's a question from Amy says, Byron Katie, I need your love. Is that true? That's the work of Byron Katie. And Andrew has a question. Does our obsession with personalities, it's at 1243, does our obsession with personalities outshine the unity of being? Relationships seem to focus on personalities.
Yeah. I think that is what commonly happens, unfortunately. But so sometimes you just meet people and you click instantly, and there's this instant kind of sharing of being. You feel they might not know anything about this teaching, but you just click together, and the personality becomes totally irrelevant. And there've been a number of people I've met where that's happened really, really strongly, and they're not spiritual people. Not all of them. They're just people I've met locally.
Yeah. So she dropped a link in the chat. If you want to just grab that and save it until we're finished, you can some good reading on this tiger, or this tiger story. Let's see
Yes, Rupert goes on to suggest that an impersonal response will not give rise to hostility. And I think that's often true, but it isn't absolutely always, because if we think about Gandhi, for example, and his beautiful impersonal universal responses, and he was assassinated, and it did give rise to hostility. So sometimes it will. But that's not a reason not to respond impersonally. But I think you have to accept that it might give rise to hostility.
Yeah, it's something that comes with maturity, though. It's not something that comes that happens by trying or by thinking about it. It's something that happens. You know that you have to say something. Of course, this is where discernment comes in to be really necessary, because if you're not, a lot of times the ego loves to lash out and use that energy as a attack.
Someone posted information about a film on in my Facebook group, 12 Angry Men, which I had seen many years ago. It's a brilliant film, and it sort of celebrates people being brave and speaking what their conscience tells them. at the time. It was one guy, and he eventually convinces everyone else. And in the Old Bailey in London, the Central Criminal Court, there's a plaque there that celebrates a whole group of jurors who refused to convict a couple of Quakers who, I think it was something like unlawful assembly or unlawfully talking to a crowd. And the jurors were put in prison for speaking their minds. And then the law was then changed as a result. So they had a huge impact on English law. And that's why there's this plaque in the Old Bailey which celebrates their bravery. And those things are important. It's so it did give rise to hostility on the part of the judge. That's why he put them in prison. But it was the right thing to do, and it was impersonal.
Yeah. This is why I spoke up about voting. I think that we have a responsibility to support a system of integrity and respect, and that system is a way of allowing these bodysuits to govern themselves responsibly and not let the ego run the show. That's all. I mean, I think that's just something that we need to step up and speak about.
Yeah.
So if we go to page 155, the top of the page, I like the statement that Rupert uses in the first paragraph where he says, "This is not a path of renunciation. It is a path of understanding and enjoyment. Nor do I mean to imply that it may not sometimes be legitimate to address unloving or unjust behavior in a partner as well as in ourself." And this is what I was talking about. This is that statement that he made, that I made earlier. He says, if a relationship is to evolve in line with love and understanding, those who are already in a long-term relationship would do their relationship great service by understanding that their companion can never fulfill their demand that they produce happiness or love for them, and as a result, withdrawing that expectation. I think that gets like 3 stars.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to even to be a partner. It can be your kids, can be any people that you're connected with, people that are close to you. That you can tell if you're falling into that trap, if you have an idea that someone disappoints you. Oh, that really disappoints me.
Yeah. Yes. And then later on, he says, nor does this understanding imply that we lead a life of passive resignation or cease responding to situations and taking appropriate action when necessary. We don't allow ourselves or those in our care, which obviously includes our children, to be abused, nor are we silent in the face of injustice. One who is established in their true nature and living in harmony with the unfolding of the universe does not refrain from action, but their actions are not initiated by the anxieties, fears, and desires that characterize the separate self or ego.
Yeah, these are all good points, really good points to notice when it's going off the rails, and how it goes off the rails, and how to maybe put a pause on that. He did say, if you look at on page 154, there's one statement I would refer to that says, however, it's almost the last paragraph on 154. It starts with however. However, one of the most common ways for an ego or apparently separate self to perpetuate itself is through conflict. So it is unlikely that such an approach will be successful unless it is coupled with therapeutic intervention. If both parties carry this projection, the scene is set for inevitable conflict.
Yes.
And I can speak for that myself. Lisa and I, we haven't had a conflict in many years, but we came close to a divorce, and we had someone come in that was a spiritual kind of a therapist, counselor, helped us to work some things out that were a disturbance in the field. And we talked through some things that never came back again.
I think that could just be so helpful to get someone like that. It could be a good friend, but really a qualified therapist is probably better. When you're having a conflict and nothing seems to resolve it, and you've looked at whether it's anything to do with me as a person, and you're just not seeing. You're just not seeing things from the other person's point of view. Then I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, it can be. It was for us. It was worth every penny. We both split the cost and said, okay, let's call this, and we call this person 911. Let's call 911.
Yeah,
that was funny.
Yeah.
It's good to have it in the rearview mirror too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Amy said, the understanding that peace and happiness cannot be given or taken away is one of the greatest discoveries a person can make. I love this. Yes, it is. It is the greatest discovery. And because it gives you your own certainty that it's a place to rest in and know. Rana says, equanimity, my new favorite word.
That's good. Very good. It is a lovely word. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any, we have about, I don't know, maybe, I guess we still have another half a page, 156. What do we see on 156?
Yes. I think this statement, when liberated from the demands of the person, our innate enthusiasm, kindness, clarity, compassion, and sense of justice become the means by which eternal truths are expressed in response to temporary circumstances.
Yeah.
I think we have to be so careful if our partner or our close friends are not into this kind of spiritual teaching, or not to the same extent as us, not to somehow project a kind of superiority onto them. And it was something I loved about the conference was Anne Sweet and her talk and her website as well, where she explains that enlightenment doesn't mean that we always act appropriately. There's not a person that becomes enlightened. There are times when anyone we regard as the greatest sage, whoever it is, Ramana Maharshi or whoever, there are times when they fall into ignorance, and what comes from them is very far from kindness, clarity, compassion, sense of justice. A good friend of mine was saying that he for a while had contact with Nisargadatta, and said that Nisargadatta was at times very, very unkind, and people somehow dismiss it, which is what something Anne covers on her website as being helpful to the person, so that they could see their separate self. But no, that's it's not right. It's not an expression of a true expression of this teaching. And I think we have to, as she says, we have to be very careful not to put any of these teachers on a pedestal and assume that their behavior is always going to be right, or always going to be in our interests or anyone's interests. It might not be, and it's very important for people to understand that. I think what we want is the truth. What we're looking for is the truth, and the truth is expressed through body minds, and sometimes it will be expressed through a particular body mind, and sometimes not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this a real. I mean, I think this has to be really carefully navigated to discern your location or where this is. Even the experience of discernment is, the mind will come in and add a layer of judgment if you're not really in established as awareness, as presence. You can see the judgment come in, and that's okay, no problem. Just see it and don't act from there, right?
Yes, but I think what the point that Anne makes is that even people who are very, very well established in awareness, they will still judge, and that will still happen. And what she recommends, which I think is really good, is that everyone who teaches has some kind of mentor, maybe someone at a peer level, or at least someone who sort of keeps an eye on things. And I think that's important. Really, it's not just judging people; it's also judging actions. You don't, well, as in the case of the movie I mentioned, and the flak in the Old Bailey. You don't always know. You can't know for certain where an action comes from. You can't. We need to live in not knowing.
Yeah. 12 Angry Men. Is that the name of it?
Yes, it is. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant movie, that one.
Okay. I'm going to have to find that one.
Yes.
He says, if our response, the last paragraph on 156, if our response comes from harmony with a situation rather than opposition to it, we align ourselves with the totality, and our action cannot help but be beneficial. Such action will always contribute to the unfolding of love and understanding in humanity. It is for this reason that Ramana Maharshi said, realization of the self is the greatest help that can be rendered to humanity.
Yes.
Yeah. This is why I think this is, this is such an exciting time for us, because we can see that finally we've come out from under the grips of a distorted sense of identity, a distorted sense of of truth. And this great awakening is the one thing that can save humanity from itself.
Yes, yes.
It's exciting.
It is. It is. And I think the thing that really helped me the most was the understanding that we don't choose our thoughts and the huge implications of that, because then you don't see anyone as guilty. You don't see anyone as ignorant. You just see the action of the universe, and that is all. It's just the unfolding patterns of the universe, and that for me, actually feeling it, it's one thing to understand it intellectually, but it's another thing to actually feel that, and to feel all the implications of it.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the toughest things for people, even though it's the most liberating. It's also one of the hardest things for these personal self bodysuits to accept, is that we don't choose our experiences. We don't really make decisions. When it comes to the question, do you choose your thoughts? That's when it starts to become real.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. When you can come to that understanding, it becomes super clear that if you don't choose your thoughts, it's only logical that you don't choose your decisions either.
Yes, or your actions. Yes.
Right. And that's freeing. That's liberating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we have a few minutes left. We've come to the end of this chapter 18. And we have 2 left. We have, and Ilse will be our co-host next week. And Jenny, how would you want to close this study?
I think the one thing I'd like to mention again is freedom. That we've talked a lot about relationships. What's really important in relationships is freedom, and it's that lack of expectation and judgment that really allows freedom to flourish. And it's that freedom allowing other body minds to have that freedom, allowing yourself to have freedom that ultimately brings harmony.
Nice. A beautiful way to close. Thank you. Thank you, Carol, for your and Amy for your comments here. Forgive myself, for I know not what I do. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. And thank you, Amy, for your continuing comments of different references here. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And we'll see you next week for chapter 19.